Welcome to 6.5. This is indirect proofs. You start by making the temporary assumption that the desired conclusion is false. Instead of assuming what you're trying to prove is true, you assume it's false. So down below here we have the key ideas to writing an indirect proof. Identify the statement you want to prove, and then temporarily assume it's false. That's the first step. Second, reason logically until you reach a contradiction. So you keep going until you can contradict what you just said was true. Point out that the desired conclusion must be true because the contradiction proves the temporary assumption false. So it's kind of backwards. Okay, so a couple other things we have to note. Longer side theorem. Whichever side is longer, it is opposite the larger angle. So 8 is bigger than 5, so angle C must be bigger than angle A. Okay, and then larger angle theorem. So we have a larger angle here, so it must be opposite the larger side. All right, so here's a understanding of triangles. You have three different numbers here, 2, 4, and 5, and they make a triangle. Okay, they meet at a point above side 5 here. But if you have two sides, 2 and 2, and one side's a 5, you notice with the protractor here, we bring it down, they don't meet in a way to make a triangle. And what if the two smaller sides added up to the same length? All right, so let's go back to the first one. The two smaller sides added together are bigger than the third side. These two sides added together are smaller than the third side, so they can't meet. What if they're the same? You add the two smaller sides together, it equals the third side. It's just going to be a straight line. So that what this means is the two smaller sides have to be bigger than the third side. All right, so we go down here to the triangle inequality theorem. How large does the third side have to be? Okay, so what we're doing is we're adding and subtracting. And with all these, it just says that the two smaller sides have to be bigger than the third side. That's what each of these say. All right, so we'll get back to that in a minute. Let's talk about indirect proofs. It's really fairly simple. Write the first step in an indirect proof. So if WV plus VU doesn't equal 12 inches, and VU is 5 inches, then WV can't be 7 inches. That's what we're learning here. All right, so now the indirect proof says, take your conclusion and say the opposite. Well, you would say that WV equals 7 inches. That would be saying the opposite. Number 2, if x and y are odd integers, then x and y is odd. X times y is odd. So the opposite of that would be x times y is even. You would try to prove that to be false. All right, so in ABC, if angle A is 100 degrees, then angle B is not a right angle. So the indirect proof would say angle B is a right angle. That's what you would try to prove to be false. If M, let's see in triangle JKL, if M is the midpoint of KL, then JM is a median. Okay, so let's just draw this generic triangle here, J, K, and L. And M is the midpoint of KL. All right, then JM is a median. All right, so we know that this is true, but we're trying to prove this. So we're using an indirect proof style. So we'll say that JM is not a median. Okay. All right, and then here are your answers, which is exactly what we said. All right, let's go on to number 5 and 6. Determine which two statements contradict each other. Triangle LMN is a right triangle. All right, so let's just draw LMN. Don't put your letters up there yet. It says angle L and angle N are congruent. Okay, that's a possibility. You'd have 90 here and 45 and 45 there. So L and N. So there's a right triangle where L and N are congruent. But then it says triangle LMN is equilateral. Well, that can't be the case if it's equilateral. it's also equal angular, and they'd all be 60-degree angles. So angle C contradicts the first two. All right, so now both x and y have measures greater than 20 degrees. Okay, both x and y have measures less than 30 degrees. All right, so that means both of them are between 20 and 30 degrees. X plus y is equal to 62. Okay, well, that doesn't make any sense, because if x and y were less than 30 degrees, then they couldn't add up to 62 degrees. Okay, now A and C work together, so that means B does not work. Okay, so now list the angles of the triangle in order from smallest to largest. So make sure you read what it's asking for on the test. Smallest to largest angle. So the smallest angle is opposite the smaller side. So that would be angle S. And then it goes to 9, which is R. And then 10 is the biggest side. It's opposite T. So SRT. And number 12, 13 is the smallest. It goes with J. Then 25, it goes with K. And then 28 goes with L. And number 13, the smallest side is 5.5, so that's angle D. Then 8.6 is F. Then 9.2 goes with E. And the smallest side for number 14, you'd have to figure out what 2 times the square root of 13 is. Well, you don't really need a calculator. 2 times the square root of 9 is 2 times 3, which is 6. And so 2 times the square root of 13 must be bigger than 6. Okay? If it's bigger than 6, then this is our biggest side. So opposite the smaller side would be Z, then 6, which would be Y, and then X. X is bigger than 6. The opposite side is bigger than 6. Okay, now let's talk about sides. So again, we're going from the shortest side to the longest side. Shortest side is opposite the shorter angle, the smaller angle. So AB, then 62 is opposite BC, and then you have AC is next. All right, 32 degrees is the smallest angle, so XY is the smallest side. Then 36 is opposite YZ, and then XZ is opposite the biggest angle. Okay, so now you got to do the triangle sum theorem. 180 minus both of those. So we do know that 127 degrees is the bigger angle because you can only have one obtuse angle. So we take 180 minus 127. That's 53. 53 minus 29 is 24 degrees. So it is the smallest angle. So PN is the smaller side, followed by MN, and then MP. So we have 90 degrees on 18. 180 minus 90 is 90. And then 90 minus 33 is 57. So 33 is the smaller angle. So FD is the smaller side, followed by FG. And then the bigger side is DG. Describe the possible lengths of the third side of the triangle, given the lengths of the other two sides. All right, so here's how you do this. You have to add the two together and subtract them. So the third side on number 19, x is between, two sides. So we add the two together. That's our biggest side that it can be. And we subtract the 2. 12 minus 5 is 7. So x has to be between those two. Add and subtract them. So number 22, x is between. Subtract those, you get 6. Add them together, you get 30. 21, subtract them. X has to be between 38 and 42. And on 22, 25 meters and 25 meters. X has to be between, subtract them. X has to be between 0 and 50. Okay, does 0 make any sense? As long as it's bigger than 0, it'll work. So what you're looking at is 225 meters that are real close together, and let's say that's just 1. Okay, so it does work, but it has to be less than 50. All right, 23. Is it possible to construct the triangle? Okay, you take your two smaller sides and add them together. If the two smaller sides are bigger than 11, then it works. And yes, it is. Okay, 3 plus 6 is 9. So no, it has to be bigger than 9. Remember, back at the beginning, we had a side that was 3 and a side that was 2, and it came down and they met at the middle. Because 2 plus 3 is 5, it made a straight line. The two smaller sides have to be bigger. Okay? All right, so now 3 plus 6 is 9. No, it has to be bigger. 17 and 28, that's 45. So no, that's not bigger than 46. And then 120 and 35 is 155. So yes, that's bigger than 125. Describe and correct the error in listing the angles, triangle ABC, in order from smallest to largest again. Smallest to largest angles. So the smallest side is 1, so it's opposite angle C. Then it goes to 2 or square root of 3. The square root of 3 is 1.71. Okay? So 1.71 is smaller than 2, so it's next in line. So it's opposite angle B, and that's where they made the mistake. And then angle A is left. Okay? And then 28, construct a stage prop of the triangular mountain, JL. It's 32. JK is 24. And KL is 26. List the angles in order from smallest to largest again. Smallest, so 24 is the smaller side, so angle L. Then 26 with angle J. That's a horrible J. And then 32 at angle K. And 2 left here. Travel from Fort Peck Lake to Glacier National Park, and from Glacier National Park to Granite Peak. Okay, Fort Peck. All right, so good. Describe the possible distances from Granite Peak back to Fort Peck Lake. All right, so that's why it's an X. We didn't want to know what that is. All right, so to get the possible lengths of your third side, you add and subtract. Okay, so if we add those, subtract those two, 565 minus 489, 76. So 76 kilometers would be the smallest distance that could be. And then you also add those two together. 565, 489, 14, 15, 1054. So that's answer A. Those are your possible lengths. X has to be between those. Now, how's your answer to part A affected if you know that the measure of angle 2 is less than angle 1, and the measure of angle 2 is less than the measure of angle 3? Okay, so if angle 2 is less than angle 1, then and angle 1 is opposite, angle 1 is opposite 489, then angle 2, meaning X, has to be smaller than 489. And then it says angle 2 is less than angle 3. Angle 3 is opposite 565. So that means, again, angle 2, which is opposite X, X must be less than 565. Okay, so you got two different types of answers there of what the distances can be if you know those angles. All right, last question. You can estimate the width of the river from point A to the tree at point B by measuring the angle to the tree at the several locations along the riverbank. Okay, So determine the possible widths of the river. All right, so possible lengths here. So if that's, you're at 40 degrees here. So in the triangle, you have a 90-degree angle, which makes this 50 degrees. And the other triangle, you have 50 degrees, which makes this 40 degrees. Okay, so since you have 50 degrees here is opposite the 50 yards, 40 degrees is smaller than 50 degrees, so that means AB must be less than 50 yards, okay? Because it's opposite the 40-degree angle, which is smaller than the 50-degree angle. And then you look at the right triangle, and the 40 degrees, which is smaller than 50, is opposite the 35 yards. So again, AB is opposite the bigger angle here, so AB must be bigger than 35 yards. So that tells us for our answer on angle A, that AB must be between 35 and 50 yards, the distance across the lake. Now, what could you do differently to obtain a closer estimate? That's pretty easy. If you have a river and you see a point right on the other side of the river, all you have to do is keep walking until you get 45-degree angles. Because if that's 90 degrees, then that's 45 degrees. So that means that those two sides have to be the same. And all you have to do is measure that distance, and then you would know how far it is across the river. And that's your answer.